Good evening and welcome to the 6 o'clock news. You may remember this bow from episodes such as Honey. I've made the front completely watertight, and the following episode of Honey, I've chopped a large hole in the front. Today we're going to prep this so that we can actually glue it shut, and I'm going to get the pad welding done in the front here.
Stroll downtown this evening when I heard music echo through the night. The same old songs that I heard the night before. So I started.
The next obvious question is, what is pad welding? So you can see we've got corrosion through this plate here, all through here, and you can see I've started to run some beads of weld. This is flux core, that's why it looks a little bit shiny. But basically the pad welding is essentially just running bead after bead after bead and filling this up, and it basically builds up any thickness that rust and corrosion has reduced. And because I can, I like to finish off just by going over with the sandblaster. So it's a pretty awkward spot to weld, and so the beads aren't necessarily that straight, but you can sort of see there's a mozza of steel on top of that corrosion now. So the corrosion's been basically sandblasted out so we can get a good weld, and then we've filled it up with bucket loads of metal. So essentially the goal is just to build it up so you've got plenty of thickness left, so any that was taken away by corrosion is no longer an issue. So what's the plan, Stan? Well, we've got to go and get rid of this old plate. So this rubbish that's sort of left off from where we were cutting the old plate off that stem, it's got to go back to this sort of finish here, and that has to happen right the way up the stem, so right up to where it's cut up there. I also need to fair, so where these various ribs and bulkheads and so on stick out a bit further than they should from the hull, they're a bit proud, they're going to be faired back down like we did on the other side. And then finally I need to weld some of this bracing, has to be welded on each stringer so that we can basically weld back into that stringer itself. And then we're ready to start putting the templates together and then put that side on. So I'm as frustrated as you are probably over how long this bow is taking to close up, so I'm going to enlist some help. I've got a friend Tom who's a boilermaker, he works just down the road, he's set himself up a business, and I'd love to get him on the boat to help and get some of this welding done. So next month he's going to come and close this up for me. So I'm going to do the prep and then I'm going to move on to other jobs. We've got a couple of jobs down the other end of the boat that I need to get into so that he can do those as well. And then we're going to blast the whole out in one big working beat. sufficiently scary. Right, now that this perimeter is cleaned up, ready to go, I need to go through and fear these so that they're nice and smooth. There's a reason why I'm so pedantic about getting this boat smooth. I want to show you something that's normal in the commercial world, but something that I want to try and avoid. Because of the colour of this boat, this example stands out quite well. See that ripple that's going on there? That's pretty standard in the commercial world. They don't really have an issue with that sort of thing because these boats are basically built to be put together fast and for a price. But you can sort of see just how much of a ripple that boat has. It's a bit hard to see on that side, a wee bit down the side there, but it's pretty uniform on both sides. But it gives you an idea, looking along from the bow, around that white stripe, you can just see how sort of wobbly it gets. This is a different boat, and you can sort of see exactly the same thing on this. Every frame you can see the weld is pretty much distorting the actual skin of the hull. That's normal in the commercial world. It's not necessarily normal in like the recreational world where that would have fairing compound put over it and smoothed out. So pretty much every steel or aluminium recreational boat would have that level of warpage underneath, or kind of a similar level of warpage depending on how it's built, and they normally put a fairing compound over it to smooth it out. Commercial boats don't do that. Commercial boats pretty much just weld it together and then paint it and off they go to sea. They don't need it to look pretty, they need it to be functional. And having a fairing compound for a commercial boat is actually a bit of a pain, because if you bash the hull, you end up knocking a big chunk of fairing compound out as opposed to just chipping a bit of paint. So for them it's actually better to leave it like that. The loss in fuel efficiency is almost insignificant. They wouldn't even notice it, but the gain that they get from having that hardiness is, you know, well worth it for them, and also the lower cost of production for that boat. I want to contrast that with Brupeg. So Brupeg is built exactly like the commercial boats. You can sort of see every rib and every frame distorts the panels. However, there's a lot less distortion in Brupeg's hull, and it's because they're not trying to do the curves as sharp on Brupeg as they are on some of these other boats. And one other factor is, if you look along here, you can just sort of see how fair that hull is now. So I've improved the fairing on this boat a wee bit by basically taking out some of the original dimples. That's only possible because I don't really care about how long it takes to get it right, whereas in the commercial world they really do smash these things together and put them out to sea. The next bit is basically fairing up these frames just to make sure that they're going to be keeping that boat as clean as we can underwater. Now that that rib and some of these stringers are skimmed down a little bit, when you get this fairing rod in there, you can press it up and you get a nice curve of hull all the way through, even in the bulgy bit down there where it was a problem. There like that, you got a nice shape, nice tight. That one there's a wee bit loose, but we'll modify that, we'll bend this thing out a bit. But yeah, we've got a nice shape going on now. So time to start getting in there. I'll radius off these here, I'll stress relieve these corners, and then what do we got? Then it's time to start welding in the stringer tabs.
I've been in your waters, been knocking at your door. I know one thing for sure, I've never been so close before. It's one way or the other, no way in between. I ain't getting any younger, you will stay forever a dream.
Okay, a common question that we keep getting asked in the comments is how are we going to attach this plate if we can only weld one side as opposed to being able to weld up the ribs and the stringers and so on from the other side, like we did on this side over here where I can physically get to it from where I'm standing. It's a really super simple solution. Basically cut the plate the right size and then cut slots in it. So this piece of cardboard with this slot in it there, you can sort of make that out. Imagine that slot lined up and fitting over where each of these tabs are. So you'd have one slot in here, one here, one here, one here, etc. And then you'd have 1, 2, 3 on each of these verticals. So you've got your plate sitting like that, and then you can get your gun in and just basically weld all the way around, and that attaches it to the substructure underneath. So you can do a single continuous weld right the way around the outside here just by V'ing it out and doing a full penetration weld. That's pretty straightforward and that's pretty industry standard. And then also this idea of doing these cutouts is also pretty straightforward. It's most common in large ship rudders where you've got basically a great big tank. It's a hollow structure and they can weld one side by getting to both sides. If one plate is able to get, both sides, etc., can get access to. But the second side, when you put the second skin on, you have to do this tab idea, and you'll see they'll have all of these sort of slots around that they welded up. Sometimes they'll skim it with a filler, sometimes they'll just leave it. But that's how they do it in the big boats, and that's how we're going to do it in this here. Right, now that I've got that done, that's ready to start putting a plate on. And apart from that guy up there, there's not that many more holes in this boat. True story. Some of you may remember when we sandblasted and painted the hull a few months back in the blast bay, I punched a hole through the side of the boat with the sandblaster. You can see those rust marks just there. Well, I've got to deal with that before we go in the water. I'm grateful that I'm not the one that's going to be repairing the side of this boat. Not that it's a difficult job, but it means that I can press on with something else on the boat, like tank testing, getting the motor running, things like that. But I will prep this for Tom. So what I plan to do is just cut out a patch with the plasma to see how bad the damage is inside, so we can do a bit of an estimate of what work is involved in doing it. Now, this tank is a bulkhead there. There's a deck coming down here, and then it does a step, sort of drops down and then goes in that sort of orientation there. And these are the stairs as you're climbing up the side of the boat to go to the bow. These are the stairs that you climb up on. Now, I believe there is a rib here, and I believe there's a rib here, something like that. I'm not 100% sure, because I think that is too far for a rib, so pretty sure there'll be one in the middle. Either way, they've got a pinhole here, got a decent hole there and a decent hole there. So what I'm going to do is go a couple of 100 mil in front of the front hole, and maybe a couple of 100 mil behind this rear hole, and then just open up a patch and see what we're working with. Right, so that's the loveliness that is inside that tank. So I need to get in there and scrape all of that out, give it a vacuum, and then maybe needle gun over the far side there and just sort of see how bad that rust is. There we go, that's what it looks like underneath all of that rust and rubbish. Hard to probably see in this light, but it's relatively solid. There is a hole just there, you can just see the end of my finger there, and then there's another one just over there as well. That goes through into the interior. You can also see porosity in the original weld. It's interesting. But overall, it's solid enough. So this is deck. This is the original deck of the boat, and this is an internal wall in the hallway just by where the wheelhouse is. So we've pulled the insulation out, and you can see this is the small hole at the front and the bigger hole at the back. And there's also rust and crap on the deck here and so on. This used to be an external part of the boat, so this is actually behind,
yeah, it did too.
Yeah, behind the wheelhouse. So it's hard to protect all of this like back in the day. And this here is partly why this is so rusty and crappy on the deck.
Well, we're going to do something a little bit odd for us.
What are you thinking?
Well, we've been talking about it, and it's an inside wall. That was an outside wall for most of its life, but it's now an inside wall. We're thinking, oh my gosh, can we say this? Can we do this? This is a new one for Brupeg. This is a new solution for Brupeg. It's even painful to say it. It's painful to say it.
So standard process on Brupeg is basically take the longest, most complicated, difficult route that we can find to patch something up so that we never have to look at it for another 50 years. And the patch job that Jess is talking about is something that we'll be able to just smash out in a hurry, and people will go, my God, that's rough. And we're hoping we're going to get a good maybe 6 to 20 years out of it.
That's not true. So it's a patch job for now because it's an inside wall. So everything that we're doing, that we've been doing, and every job that we've had to do as a fix, has been because we need to be on the hard stand. It's a structural bulkhead, holes in the out a hull or whatever, and this is really a very nice experience. Actually, we can actually say we're going to do this when we're in the water. That's very cool. So we're going to fix that outside bit. Well, Tom will do that, right?
Yeah, Tom's going to do that.
So if you prep it and then Tom can do it, and we'll fix this bit. So slap some paint, I don't know, stick some sticker in there, Trev. We'll do a Trev, stick some sticker in there.
2 or 3 cans should do it.
I think so. Lots and lots of spray cans, spraying over and over again. I don't know. Sellotape? We could do sellotape. Maybe we shouldn't go. We should do a little bit more serious than that. Maybe duct tape. I don't know.
2 or 3 layers of duct tape with epoxy over the top, just
that
in case.
Could work.
Just in case you get UV.
No,
true. Actually, epoxy's no good with UV. We have to epoxy it first. Let's do it properly.
No, you'll be right because it's an inside.
True.
It's inside that outside thing.
So we don't have to factor in UV.
Yeah. So duct tape's fine.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great.
It's very exciting to be able to do this. Actually, go. No, I'm not going to do another wall. So old boats, they do break down like this. But what we realised was, this was an old hole from the galley that used to be behind where Dane's sitting. So
yeah, right. So we had a bit of a think about this. Where I am right now in the corner of our main galley. So galley, la 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 la. Right. Originally as a fishing boat, half of this room was a galley, half of it was a dinette. And in this corner, just down here behind these cans, I've put patches over some holes that had rusted through. I've replaced all of this floor years and years ago, and there was also some holes in the far corner of this area of the boat. I realised that would have been leaking into that tank, which is what caused the rust years and years ago. Like the oxygen was able to get through, so that's what's actually made that tank die, basically. So once we fix all of this outside of the wall, once we fix these 2 holes down here, and there's one little hole on the outside that we need to deal with, that tank will be oxygen free again. So we can delay having to fix this properly, and we can do a bit of a bodge job on it because it's an inside wall, and we can do it when we're in the water.
bodge job, bodge job, bodge job.
What do we want?
Bodge job.
When do we want it?
Right now.
How long do we want it to last?
2 or 3 weeks. So remember, this is not a private boat that where our goal is to look good and get approval from people. This is a work boat. So we're expecting that through the next couple of years, or 5 years, or however long we're working with this boat, that there'll be walls cut out, there'll be bulkheads. There'll be all sorts of stuff coming and going, and that's what's normal on a commercial boat, that's what's normal on a steel boat. They wouldn't care as much as what we care about it, of course. Leave her. Stop. But try not to freak out. Try and adapt your thinking to what this boat is all about, and also our personalities. This suits our white shiny boat, not going to work for us. I mean, we'd have it scratched up in no time, because you want to do shit with your boat, don't you? So yeah. So I'm very. Can you tell I'm excited? I'm very excited. Botch job. Woohoo! Yes.
Yeah.
Dane's exhausted. Look at this. This is after a day's work. Looking handsome and wind blowing.
Yeah.
Oh, in the wrong way. Wind blowing because you've had your head in a thing blasting it.
I've got there's some conditioner or something in my hair or whatever, and all of the sand from earlier today and all of the needle gunning shit is I have one dread, just a single dread, my whole head here. Time for something completely different. You're going to be able to see how they build a marina in the next few weeks over the channel. They are adding another finger, a large berth finger, onto the marina across the road from us. So there's a heap of construction equipment coming in and out of the yard, and it's going to be a pretty cool and interesting process to document. So I'll take a few shots of it and show you how they build this thing. This is the pile tender. These two barges bolt together, so they form one large barge, and they carry the piles from the shore out to the piling rig. These are the new marina walkways. These are essentially big hollow concrete boxes. They're designed to last a minimum of 40 years, but they were concrete, they're probably going to last a lot longer than that. These are the piles that hold them to the ground. So these are 19 metre long steel pipe, and they get hammered into the ground with the piling rig, and then they get sleeved using these heavy wall plastic sleeves. They get pushed down from the top of the pile right down as far as you can get it into the mud. They launch these as two individual barges, and then they assemble them on the water. So this is barge 1, and this is barge 2. These two work as a pair. The orange is essentially a delivery truck for piles, and the other barge is the piling rig that pushes them into the ground. Neither of them are self-propelled, so that orange tug pushes them wherever they need to go. The steel piles have been getting delivered to the yard over the last couple of months, and they get launched using the travel lift from the land onto the orange delivery barge. Once there's a few piles ready to go on the delivery barge, the red crane on the piling rig here picks up the pile that they're going to work with and then swings it around into the yellow piling rig. After a bit of setup, the pile's in position and they can start hammering it down into the substrate below. When they're up and running, they can get 6 piles in per day, so there's a constant stream of new piles coming from the storage yard out the back, getting launched onto the orange transport barge and then taken over to the piling rig. There's still a long way to go, but I hope you find this as interesting as we do, the process of building a marina.
This is what Snoop does when I'm not well. He won't leave my knee alone. The one bit of sunlight in the room, and she's got it. I will not be moved.
Yeah.
This is really good.
You have no authority to move me. On whose authority?
She's loving it.
Still with the blood in her ears, all the veins and everything.
She's so cute. She's very trusting of you, isn't she?
Sometimes I'll squash her against the chair and rub her, and she's like squirms all around, and then I walk over to a different chair and she'll run over and she'll like bear hug my hand back again. Like, I haven't finished.
She's loving the sun.
big kettle too. Go for a walk. I need to feed you.
Thankfully, it's nice and calm. It's only blowing 25 knots right now, so that makes life a lot easier. I was thinking maybe doing some sort of welding, but I think it's a bit too calm for that. I might just wait for this afternoon for that breeze to really come up. Right, we're powering on with the jobs. That one there is ready to go for Tom. That one up there, there's a chop hole in the side. That's pretty much ready to go. I'm not going to bother doing too much more on that. He'll decide how big he wants to cut that hole out. What I do need to do is get our minion up onto the top deck so that we can blast our new pad that we put in for the anchor winch. So we've got to start assembling that winch and get that running. This thing is currently quite heavy. I think it's about that. Oh no, I filled it up. It's chocker. Okay, so it's as heavy as it's ever going to get. Wicked, that's going to be fun. Alright, we're going to have to modify the crane. Alright, so that's a good solid 25, maybe 30 knots. So theoretically, that's 500 kgs. Yeah, still clear the side. Okay, we need double purchase. In order to lift this sandblaster up, it's pretty heavy. Don't know how heavy, it's probably 200 kg at a guess. This is more than capable. This will lift 800 kg. This thing here can lift 1000 kg when this arm is pushed right back in, but I don't have enough reach if I push it right back in. So set as it is now, I can lift 500 kg. However, in order to get the full 800 out of this winch and not blow it up, you know, melt the motor and so on, I need to do a 2-to-1 purchase, which basically means we hook that like that, put a pulley in down here. It's half the speed but twice the power. Yeah, so time to modify this. Alright, some common questions that we get asked about this crane quite often. Did it start life as an engine hoist? Yes, absolutely it did. Is it mild steel and won't that mean it's going to rust out? Yes, absolutely it will. It's box section, we can't get inside the box to paint it, so it's not going to last, it will fall apart. However, the whole point of this crane was to figure out, is this useful for what we need up the front? And then it was a real cheap way of doing it. So for like less than $300 I think in total, excluding the winch, we were able to basically prove the point that this is super handy up the front here. We use it for all sorts of stuff up here. I added the electric winch. I started with a real small winch and I added this one because the small one was not powerful enough, but it just transformed being able to work up on the bow. It's just a piece of cake. It used to be an absolute nightmare. So long story, when we get to it on the boat, when I have time, probably when we're in the water, I'm going to rebuild this whole thing. I'll either do it out of aluminium or stainless, heavy wall aluminium or stainless 316, and I'd love to. This doesn't have to be electrified or hydraulic, whatever. This doesn't have to be anything other than manual, so I'll probably leave that as is. I would like to change this, ideally hydraulic, but it's a bit of a pain in the neck, so I probably won't do that. I'll probably stick with electric, but I'd like to find a way of making it pretty watertight because it's a pretty exposed part of the boat. But yeah, so I'm sort of pondering ideas. This is something, so if you've got any ideas as to how to make this better, that would be awesome. I want to increase the reach because we don't have enough reach. I'd like to be able to swing right around the whole bow. At this stage we can kind of get a small arc over on this side, which for most things is okay, but it would be nice to increase that a little bit. And I do probably want to beef up where it mounts onto the boat, so it's just a bit stronger and stiffer, but for now it's plenty for what we need. So we can get it to there. It's going to have to do. Need as much height as I can get so that we can clear this sandblaster over the side. Okay, it weighs more than me. Right. We need a new plan. Okay, so here's my plan. This is too heavy to move. So what I'm thinking is I've pulled the blasting nozzle off. I'm thinking of putting like 5 or 10 psi in and dumping it into a clean bucket and just literally pouring all of the sand into this bucket. This is 60 litres and the sand I think is about 2 kgs per litre of sand. It's quite heavy, so hopefully that's going to remove about 100 odd kg of weight. If I can get the full bucket out, it'll do 120 kgs, but yeah, let's see if that'll work. I don't know if it's going to work or if it's going to just shower shit everywhere. We won't know until we try. Here we go. 20 psi. Oh, look at that. Let's move sand around the boat using air. That works a treat. So I've changed all of the valves so that I've got no air pushing down this line here. It should be 100% sand, so the air pressure is going into the yellow tank and basically pushing straight down on the sand, and the only escape is at the bottom of the sand through this pipe all the way around and then out into the bucket. I'm going to call this a success. Alright, let's try all of that again. I think it's going to be a bit more successful this time. Oh, yeah, that's lighter. Alright, lovely. Please fit. Oh, you're going to fit. How awesome is that? Alright, let's get you up the top. I just nipped over to the chandlery to get a couple of stainless things. So what I want to do is weld on this stainless loop somewhere down here like that. It's just a D ring. Just going to weld that somewhere down like that for this here, so that I can basically hook the crane into this here and pull it tight, and it rigids everything up. What you find is if this is loose, it'll rock back and forth like that and sends that noise all the way through the boat. So by getting rid of it, putting it over here somewhere, putting a wee bit of tension on it, I think I'll be able to stop that. In fact, I might even put it on the deck, just maybe, yeah, give it a bit more oomph. There's a couple of other things I want to do. The crane, I want to put, I'd love to change it to actually having a bearing rather than just a friction surface in this area here between these two flanges. I do need to put something in there to make it slide a bit better. And what my plan is actually using high density polyethylene, just do essentially a big washer in between them so it can slide on that, and then put a grease nipple in here and fill this tube with grease and then squeeze the grease out so it just comes out. So it'll be HDPE plastic, but also you know, a grease surface for it to slide on. Yeah, haven't done any of that because we've still got paint up here, so I just thought I'll just keep the grease out of the system for now. But yeah, I'd love to change it to some sort of roller bearing. That would be amazing, but anyway, that's way down the track. So up the front here, once you've anchored, you've finished pulling the anchor into the mud and so on, and you're back down on it and that sort of thing, you want to unload the winch. You don't want the winch taking the strain of the next 2 weeks of anchoring or whatever it may be. So I need to make some sort of locking mechanism to basically lock the chain to the boat as opposed to the chain to the winch. This pad here in the deck is a big piece of stainless. It's where the original anchor winch used to bolt to Brupeg. We've put a bigger anchor on, we've changed a few things, that's why, and a different winch, that's why we've had to offset our winch off to one side and further back. So ignore that, look at this stainless patch here. So what I've done, this is essentially a lump of 2205 stainless, so high tensile stainless. It's about twice as strong as 316 stainless. It's really quite robust. And what I'm planning is I'll knock a hole through here with the mag drill, and then I'll be able to put a shackle onto this. I was thinking of just welding it straight to the deck in line with the anchor, chain, winch, etc. Put a stainless shackle, a 19mm shackle onto this piece of stainless, and then a small piece of nylon to separate the stainless from the galvanized chain, and then a galvanized chain hook at this end here. That was my thought. It doesn't have to be very long, it literally just has to lock the chain to the boat. Now this is not the snubber for the anchoring system. This is literally just to lock the chain to the boat in case the snubber itself fails. The snubber is going to be off these two bollards. It'll go through the two fair leads here, and then it'll go off to the chain itself. So it'll be like a twin, I think it's called like a bridle system, or basically twin nylon ropes going down from the side of the boat here down to the chain, and that's going to act as the shock absorber for the chain. So as the boat's pitching around and so on, the snubber basically allows the shock of that constant jolting, instead of transferring the shock into the boat, so you're getting a jolting sort of anchoring experience, you end up with a much more sedate, sort of slow, gentle experience. The other thing the snubber does is it stops the noise transferring from the anchor and the chain up through the bow roller and into the boat. So as the boat swings around and moves over time when you're anchored, the chain rolls across the bottom of the ground, and that sound literally transfers all the way out like a telegraph wire onto the boat. And steel chain, steel boat, it's really loud. Even on a fiberglass boat, it's still really, really loud. So the snubber essentially knocks out that noise. It stops the noise transferring across the nylon. So that's the purpose of a snubber. There's probably some other ones out there, but they're the main ones. The chain lock here is essentially my backup. So if one of the two snubbers dies for whatever reason, this is going to lock the chain to the boat, so no matter what, the winch is still not taking the load. Although this doesn't necessarily look that pretty, it's actually high tensile stainless. After a bit of a polish up, that's what it comes up like. It's quite nice, lovely and smooth. Put a hole in there and we'll weld it to the deck. And there we have it, sandblasted, ready to paint, except for one minor detail. I need to go through these 4 holes with the mag drill, little fella just there, and clean them up. Make sure we get those welds out of the way of the bolt holes themselves so the bolts will travel down there nicely. Also, this shiny piece of stainless just here, that is going to be where we're welding on the Uber anchor holder on her. And this is my Uber anchor holder. So 2205 high tensile, 316 19mm shackle. I will, you can sort of see there's a wee bit of slop in that, so I will probably put some plastic washers in either side of that just to stop that slop, just to shut it up. It doesn't have to take a lot of load, that's why I'm happy to use plastic.
Don't look before you leave. What you give, you get to keep. So long, farewell, bye-bye. Let's have a toast for those lost old lives. And my crooked little heart that seems so rebellious is falling apart right now. I'm bleeding, an easy kill, gonna leave it all behind. I think it's time for me.
I wanted a really beautiful weld, so it was always going to be TIG to put this piece onto the boat. This is the port side, and this is the starboard side, with a single route all the way around. Now it's time to climb back under the golden cloak of doom and get 2 more beads right the way around, so this thing will have a really solid join to the boat. And this is what it came up like. 3 runs right the way around, blended in from the stainless piece to the deck. It's late on a Friday, and I was hoping to get this sandblasted and painted, and these 4 holes here drilled out, ready to go prior to this episode ending, but I'm out of time. We have to edit this episode up to get it out, and next week you're going to be able to see us put this thing together, as well as hopefully having an anchor winch bolted onto this area here.
Caught behind